And the thing that was special about the U.S. is that we come from this common law tradition that goes back to when the lords of the manor would mediate disputes between their serfs.
Yeah.
So when these environmental issues came up in the 60s and 70s, really the 50s and 60s before there was like a framework.
Yeah.
People were wondering, like, how do I recover for the fact that the awful pollutants from this factory are damaging my cars? They're ruining my house.
Eating your paint job off your car.
Yeah. So they turned to old common law, which is trespass, which is one of the oldest common law principles. And so in tort law, it's that you're causing something to be in my property and it's causing me damage.
Yeah.
And through these trespass cases was able to be built a framework of environmental law, and it came to the forefront with Silent Spring, Larry Carlson, and a few other things, where Richard Nixon, a Republican president, founded the EPA, and then you had things like the Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, and it moved from there. But in a country like China that doesn't really have that framework to build from, it's tougher for something to get traction. So you need influence, which is starting to happen from these companies that are relocating there or building facilities there and saying our executives can't go outside.
Or it actually just happened.
The people who are dying, and the Chinese, it's the Chinese model is the state-centered economy.
So my mother
back.
works for a multinational, big deal corporation, and she's just taken a new position which will take her to China 4 times a year.
Okay.
And I completely seriously asked her to please request hazard pay, but she said, it's funny that you asked that because, we're trying to restructure this plant and I've just lost my plant director because she won't go and work in Shenzhen, China because, you can't live there. You can't live there. So I can see how there will be pocketbook issues for the people who are running this shit. But I don't see how it happens quickly enough that it's pre-tipping point.
But look at California. California has some of the strictest emission standards. They are the strictest in the United States.
Yeah.
And they're that way because there was so much smog in LA.
Yeah.
In part, there's also lots of hippies in here, but it's like there's mainly because of the
that
smog.
issue,
yeah.
There were hazard days in New York City, and there's an episode of Mad Men where they talk about it, like in the '60s.
Yeah. Let me tell you why China's not as bad as we think it is. You're right. It's really bad right now, right? They're putting a coal plant online every 5 days or whatever it is, but. The Chinese take a very structured approach to the way that they handle their policy and the way that they handle their people. And one of the reasons is they're actually kind of scared of their people. They're scared of unrest. And so they're actually very responsive to the public these days. And I'm almost a little envious of the Chinese model, at least going forward, for the size and the scope.
We don't need to get that on writing
and the
because
scale.
We have that on film.
Yes, we do. The size and the scope and the scale of the changes that are going to have to come are going to be much easier to do with an authoritarian government than they are going to be with a democratic government, which is purposely designed to move very slowly.
Well, and they're smart and they see the incentives in the market to be the leader.
I mean, they're killing it in solar energy right now. They're the world leader in solar energy. And they are devoting about 5% of their GDP to renewable energy projects and basically trying to figure out what their system of energy is going to be like in a post-coal, post-oil world in a way that we're not. Because 5% of GDP
they don't have a
is
domestic oil supply.
Right.
To speak of, so
they have a lot of serious demographic and logistical problems in that they can't really feed themselves. They're buying land up all over the globe to ship back so they can just feed their people.
Bread baskets.
Like in Africa.
Yeah. And they're really, they're sensitive to this pollution stuff. I mean, they've kind of got a really good government set up for rapid change to personal response because they're authoritarian, they do whatever they want, but typically, when a train accident happens or when there's a horrible pollution days, people get on Weibo, which is their version of Twitter, and they get pissed about it. And a couple million people, it's easy enough to get a couple million Chinese people pissed about something because there's so many of them. And the government responds very quickly. They sack people, they change programs around, and in the case of climate change, they're starting to work on the underlying mechanics of how they get energy and how they handle their food and all the other systems that sort of supply their things. So in a lot of ways, if you go to like Beijing right now, I think it's Beijing, half the water that you would, half the hot water you would get from your shower comes from solar panels, the water that's heated from solar panels on the roof. They're thinking systemically, and they're starting to implement it on a large scale. Germany, if you go to Germany, it's Europe's largest economy. Right now they're getting like a quarter of their energy from renewable sources, and they think they'll have 50% by 2020. Like, these are really not unattainable marks, but the United States, despite being the world leader, just about everything else is in last place with this. We're just gridlocked, and we don't want to think about it. So we are the laggards, and we need to take cues from everybody else who are starting to get this problem and